Welcome to Movie Friends. We are your hosts, Michelle and Seth.
As movie lovers, we can sometimes be very disconnected from the reality of movie making. A film takes years to make, sometimes even a decade or more, and a large number of decisions by everyone involved leads to something that can be very different from what was originally planned.
This isn't a bad thing, though. Creative input from others can improve a scene, limitations can lead to creative workarounds that will be considered genius, and even though it's frustrating, sometimes the timing just works out differently than what you wanted.
Today we're talking with Christian Nilsson. He's the director of Westhampton, a movie about, well, a movie. It's about the man that made it and how his life is intertwined with the characters in it.
Westhampton was originally supposed to be made years ago, and then COVID happened. In the meantime, Christian made a few shorts, a different feature, and we'll let you hear the story of how the production came back around to Westhampton. If you know anything about movie making, it's kind of a miracle. I saw Westhampton at the Stony Brook Film Festival, so throughout the episode when I refer to the Q&A, that's what I'm referencing.
This is our episode with Christian Nilsson. We hope you enjoy it.
Christian, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Westhampton. So glad you're here. And it was nice to meet you and your wife at the festival, so thank you for that. As we start, we wanted to ask you if you could talk about the long project that has been underway. Where did the idea come from? You mentioned during the Q&A that you've been writing Westhampton since 2012?
Yeah, this has been a project that I've been working on in some way or another for over 10 years now. It's changed quite a bit from its first inception to the final film that you saw the other night. Honestly, when it first started, I guess the backstory is I was a big fan of the film Once, if you remember the film Once that came out a long time ago.
Wow.
And there was a documentary that came out a few years later called The Swell Season, I believe it was what it was called. But it was about the two subjects of that film and about how they really skyrocketed to fame, and they started going on this global tour. And over the course of this documentary, you really see like what it did to their relationship and how they dealt or didn't deal with fame. And I was really interested in the idea of like, I wonder if you could intercut those two. Could you intercut this black and white Swell Season documentary with the color film Once? And I wonder what that would look like. And so I started thinking about what that story might be. And it wasn't like, I didn't want to feel like a mockumentary, but it did feel like it would be like a DVD extra. Like this would be like a DVD extra for a movie that doesn't exist. It was in playing with that story that eventually, that Westhampton was really born out of that. It was maybe a year or so before I wrote the first draft of it, and then there were several different iterations. Terrence Cray, who's one of the producers on the film, he edited the film. He has a story by credit on the film. He actually wrote a draft of the script, maybe in like 2014, when I was about like pretty close to abandoning it, and there were things that he discovered that I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And then the script as it exists now, it's more or less been that since about 2017, 2018. And that's when we started trying to put the film together, and we put a lot of the cast together. We were very close to making the film in 2019, lost funding, and then COVID happened and all that. So it's that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, it took a long time, but it's the heart of it. I actually feel like has remained the same throughout.
As someone who just watched the film, your response to that question is so interesting to me because I never would think that the genesis of this was the movie Once. That's incredible. Wow.
It also gave me the confidence to make the film at a much smaller budget than I think we were ever hoping to.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Once was I forget what the budget for that film was, but nothing.
Right.
Gave us the confidence that we could make something too.
Wow, I have to check this out.
Yeah, I had a very intense read of the film and kind of an intense experience watching it. So anyway, yeah, to hear that it came from Once, I'm like readjusting my brain. So your first film, Dashcam, is about an editor who works for a news outlet that finds himself in a very tense situation when he's accidentally sent some very classified and very explosive footage. That movie, in the same way as Westhampton, deals with like the nitty gritty kind of emotionless work that goes into what we see on screen. The through line for me throughout both of these is that there's a lot more to the story that we see than just meets the eye. Why do you think you have this kind of lean when you're telling a narrative story?
Yeah, it's not something I set out to do when they both were created. Dashcam is interesting because Dashcam was created, written, shot, edited, released in less than like an 8-month period, while Westhampton has been this really big, long one. Really, that was born out of like the frustration of us losing Westhampton in 2019, like when we lost the funding and then we tried to put it back together and then COVID happened. And so like that frustration in a lot of ways went into making Dashcam. So it's it was never something that when we were telling that story that we wanted to have that through line. I don't even know if it was something that I had noticed until well after making the film that was that through line existed. But if I had to peg it to something, I think it's like, so I work in news and media. I've worked for various publications and news outlets since 2011. And so like the Dashcam, very much like I used to be the writer reporter, and I worked very closely with an editor. And so so I would have been the bad guy or the annoying boss in that interaction or relationship. But it was something that it was my day to day. And so getting footage, writing a story around that, or some sort of like user generated content that you're getting, and you have to build something around. That was very much my day to day. And so when I started writing back like when I'm in film school, I think everyone tries to, those early projects, you're trying to write what you know. Beyond that, there's a degree of it was the research that I was doing for every project that I had to do for work. And so, and trying to tell these really well-rounded stories for more of like in a news capacity. And I think that's why that exists in both of those projects. It's like somebody scrutinizing or having some sort of relationship with something in front of them. And even the projects that I'm working on right now that I'm in development for, they have that in common. Like there's still this element. Maybe it's less direct than Dashcam or Westhampton, where it's not like we're able to cut back and forth between those elements. But there is a tangible thing that someone's looking at that they are having a relationship with that is leading them to act in a certain way. I don't know why that is. Actually, that's probably a better answer than whatever I just mumbled. I don't know why, but it's definitely there. It's definitely something that exists in a lot of the things that I'm interested in. But it's also exists in films that I like, that I watch and love. Like I love Blow Up. I love Blowout.
Sure. The two blows. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there's something about that I really gravitate towards, and so it's probably a terrible answer, but
it's great.
That doesn't change. It's a great answer. That is my answer.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having movies that you've made be in conversation with each other, or even a period of your career focusing on one thing, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Like we all love and praise Cronenberg for how every single one of his movies grapples with the horrors of modern day life and the effects of technology on the human body, right? And whether it's through body horror or psychiatry or anything, we don't knock him for having that lean, and I don't for you. And honestly, I actually appreciated Westhampton a little more after watching Dashcam and kind of taking the two together. The feel of the two movies are different, right? But kind of being able to see your take on, I'll just say, media as a whole, right? Over the course of two films with two very different characters, two very different budgets and settings and all that stuff. I really was like, yeah, this guy has something that is worthwhile to say. So yeah,
I
thought it was
appreciate
a good
that. I
answer.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you talked about the inspiration for Westhampton a little bit and then mentioning Once, but Westhampton's in this great category of movies about movies. And you're playing with the form a bit. And so, for example, we start the movie with this is a work of fiction, any resemblance to actual persons, et cetera, et cetera. And then the small I'm sorry that flashes in the credits of the movie. And then within the movie being repeated in the credits of the actual movie. Can you talk to us about including some of these layers and that make it more interesting than a normal, straightforward narrative? And also, how did you balance between the both movies that were playing within one another?
Yeah, there's a phrase or a genre I think that we like made up as we were trying to tell people or describe to people what we had made or were trying to make, and that was it's a meta drama. What does that mean? I don't really know. It sounds cool, huh? But this idea of like that there's a story within the story, and we're kind of like playing with those layers, and in the same way that I wanted an audience to lean in while watching Thomas Bell's story unfold and seeing his movie popping back and forth. I was interested in that idea that you also have that about the film you're watching in general too at the same time. And so by starting what we called the greater film, the color film with Finn Wittrock playing Tom Bell, by having that legal disclaimer at the start, I wanted to create some sort of sense of like what we're watching is also this. There's a filmmaker behind this greater film that we're watching that also has the same connection that Thomas Bell has to his film, and so I my hope was that it would shape the experience that someone has when they're watching it, and the I'm sorry at the end of that is very much connected to that idea. Like, wait. In the same way that Tom Bell makes his film as almost like it's a failed attempt at forgiveness or atonement. Did I just watch that when I finished this 94-minute film? Did I just like see somebody dolls. Doing that? Yeah, exactly. And so that we were very conscious of that when making it. But I do think that relationship is important to the film and how people enjoy it. It was never meant to just be a cute button at the end. But I do think that when we're having conversations about forgiveness and atonement, I do think that last layer is important. Like that it's not by saying like it's not clean, it's messy, and then you kind of like throw that I'm sorry at the end. It's like, yeah, but like maybe I didn't learn that either, and like and maybe there's still something to grapple with at the end. We were talking back when we were writing it, filming it, when we were editing it, of like, we never wanted it to feel clean. We never wanted to feel like a sense of catharsis that was given at the end of this, that like, this is not a clean process. And so we didn't want someone to feel that at the end of it, that like, oh, how clean that wrap up was. Like it should feel equally messy. And then you asked the question about the way I approached the making of those two films.
Yes, please do. Yes.
We were aware that we wanted the two films to just feel like they were painted by two different hands. We didn't want it to feel that the same person made both films. Like we wanted it to feel that Tom Bell made this other film. And so every decision we made in the production of those two films, like it had to be differentiated. It had to be incredibly clear what that distinction was. And so what we call the greater film is color. It is it's shot in a 2:1 aspect ratio. The camera rarely moves. It's a stylistic choice to always like show Tom's status in his own life and town, of like that he really can't get out of it, that he's not really welcome. We're never really connecting with him as you generally would with the main character. We almost feel like we are watching him. It's almost a voyeuristic quality to it. He's very commonly in a frame within a frame, so that like to really show how he is kind of imprisoned by some of the decisions that he made, the actions that he makes and doesn't make. And then on the other side of that, you have what we called Thomas Bell's Westhampton, which is black and white, 16 millimeter, 4:3 aspect ratio. It's almost entirely scored, where the other film is very rarely scored, if ever. And then, and the camera's always moving. The camera's always up close. Like they really couldn't be further apart. The dialogue in Thomas Bell's Westhampton's also, it's slightly campy. Like they're always saying the thing they feel, where in the greater film, they're never saying the thing they feel. In fact, they're saying very little in general. And so being able to cut between those two, it really lends itself, at least we hope, to those two different hands. And the only time those stories ever bleed into each other is there's a moment where Tom is having a conversation that is decades longer than it should have happened. That's the only moment where the two scores blend together, where you hear a musical motif that was assigned to their black and white character versions, and then a motif that Tom has been wearing whenever like in the very few moments that there was a musical score, there was this like ambience that kind of came into play with some bells that you would hear or wind chimes. And there's only one moment where those two things touch. And beyond that, like the both stories were always incredibly separate and never should meet.
Yeah. Did you find directing essentially two movies, if you will, challenging? Or did you like that? Like was it fun to play creatively like that?
It was a lot of fun. Steph mentioned before how Dashcam does not look similar to Westhampton, and like that. That's because they're different stories. Like they shouldn't feel the same.
Yeah.
Then they weren't treated the same. And so in the same way, the two films in Westhampton, the two versions of Westhampton, were treated in a very different way. And it was so fun to be able to do that. And so we shot the black and white film several months earlier than we shot everything else. So we shot that in the summer and we shot everything else in the fall. It was 5 days of production. We cast most actors from like backstage or people that I had known or worked with in some capacity before then. And we just stayed in a house together and we filmed over I guess 2.5 weekends. And it was just fun. It was what I had said to everybody when they came out. I was like, this is not going to be a polished film set. Like this is going to be what it felt like to make movies, and making movies was just fun. Like we're just like one of our producers who grew up on the same street as me. His mom would like cook lunch and dinner for us. So so we would like go back and shoot like we would have a meal that she had cooked, and then we'd go back out and we'd shoot again. And it like there was like everyone on set was like, there's a camera, one person for camera, one person for lights, one person for sound, and then someone that was like driving people around. Like it was the most pared back set. But the goal again being that it was what it was like to make movies when it was fun making movies, like that was exactly what it was. Like we had so much fun. Every day would end with around like a bonfire, and all of us like being able to just like share our time together and just be able to like enjoy that process. And not to say that I didn't enjoy us doing the greater film in the fall, but that was a bigger production. There were much more people involved. There's hotels and flights and agents and managers and hair and makeup and costumes. It's a much bigger thing. And not to say I didn't have fun doing that. I did have a great time doing that, but it's different. Being able to know what that film was going into the other was really helpful. We always knew the moments that we cut in between. So like we were able to be purposeful in how we approached those moments. But Finn, who plays Tom Bell, never saw the other film. He kept on saying, "Can I see it?" I was like, "I can't show you. It's not edited." The only scene that he was able to see was the car accident, because that was projected. That you see that projected when he's there, when he's doing a Q&A at the opening. So that's the only moment that he had that he was able to see.
Wow. So did those two actors, young Tom and old Tom, did they ever meet and talk
the
like,
Tribeca
hey,
premiere. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah. Going back to the very beginning about this being a movie about movies, when the first line comes up that just says this is a work of fiction, and then the rest of the lines come on, and I have to stop and say, wait a minute, I've seen this before, but it takes you out of it because you're used to seeing that at the very end of the credits, right? If you're a sicko who sits around and watches something until the very, very end of the credits, even a biopic about Johnny Cash will say, this is a work of fiction. This is not based on anyone who really exists, right? And then, not to talk too much about the ending, but how we shift from one thing to another. And then again, including that, I'm sorry, that flashes, it really creates this kind of almost like a time loop. We're beginning where we normally end. And then at the end, it brings us back to the beginning of the film. I almost felt that we were working towards a thriller horror confrontation all the way up to RJ Mitty outside of the school being like, go inside, it's okay. We have our main character go back to a small town. There's a lot of tension between him and different characters. He's been given a lot of drugs and alcohol that's kind of knocking him off kilter. I really thought that we were going towards like a very scary place. Were you intending to make us as the audience feel a little fearful for the main character, or that something was amiss, or am I just paranoid?
I can't say you're not paranoid. That might, I can't say that's true or not. There was definitely a sense of dread that we were playing with at different moments, and we trying to introduce that early on with like even when he's backstage watching the final clips of his own film, like the first 5 minutes of the movie, where we're watching the car accident where his high school girlfriend dies. So yeah, there was this element of like you should never fully trust this of what you're seeing. I don't know how much I wanted to feel like it would become a scary film. Yeah. But like there is something, and I think something we tried to balance of like if someone were to describe this as a thriller, they would. I don't think they would be accurately
correct
putting this in the right bucket. But there is something to it that is thriller-esque of like what is the truth in this story, what really happened in Westhampton 20-ish years ago. Who is this guy that I'm following? And I think all of those, I guess, tropes, like they might lend themselves better to a thriller, but that's just never how we treat them. I'm not surprised to hear that you had that connection to it, because I think generally or conventionally that's kind of where this would be going. For us, or for at least me, I think that's also what memory has that in common too, of like sometimes memory is kind of, we look back, it's like, oh, it's kind of scary, or like we're like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with this. And so I wanted to have I wanted viewers to have a similar relationship when they were watching this. Also, like the way that it was edited, and it's like sometimes we get out of scenes super fast, and sometimes we're sitting in them a little too long. Mm-hmm. All of that was trying to make someone feel like they could both never catch up to what it was, but also feel like they were on the back foot on what this is.
Right. Well, and it's well done, I should say.
It's very well done.
Like I don't mean to say it's like, oh, this is confusing. It's well done, and again, it fits into the overarching idea of playing with the form. Like if you watch a lot of movies and then you watch Westhampton, you can see all of the places where you are playing with the form, and I think in very interesting ways.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's something we were conscious of when making this, and so you calling that out, that's I think that means it worked to some degree.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about your cast of the Greater movie during the Q&A after your film premiered at the festival. You and RJ were talking about how you met RJ at a video game convention. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. It was connected to the making of the film. It wasn't like I didn't just like make it. I didn't just meet him at a video game convention. We were in the earliest stages of putting the film together, and his manager was like, "Hey, do you want to meet him at this place?" So it wasn't like I was just at a video game convention and just stalked him.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was scheduled. I was aware during the Q&A of like that might have gotten lost in translation a little bit. But
I was like, hey, that's
no harm, no foul.
Really cool. They're into video games, and hey, that's a neat place to pick up actors. But
yeah, that's what these longer interviews are for. We can clear the RJ MIDI air.
Right.
I appreciate it.
But how did you find the rest of your cast? And did you go through a traditional audition process?
We did audition some of the actors. So if we're back in time, like 2018, 2019, when we're putting all these pieces together for the first time. I always knew RJ was who I wanted to play Fitz. Like there was never really a debate about that. I had never seen him play a character like Fitz, but it also felt so aligned with every interview or a clip I saw of him like as a person. I was like, oh, what an interesting side of somebody that they don't really get to seem like they get to explore. So like the idea of like being able to cast him against type was interesting to me. We were working with a casting director as well because I wanted to find an actor to play a certain role in the film, but I didn't want to be using somebody that anybody had ever seen before on screen. And so we did a global casting effort to cast that role, which I won't say much more about than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Tom, that same casting agent or casting director put together a list of actors, and on that list was Finn Wittrock. And I remember seeing his headshot, seeing his name. I was familiar with Finn's work, but I'd only known him from the Ryan Murphy universe. And I didn't think when I first saw that list of names, I didn't connect with that one, with seeing his, because I felt like, I think that's I'm trying to make a very different film than this. But I then saw a play on Broadway called The Glass Menagerie, which had an actor in it that I was considering for one of those roles I was referencing before. And Finn Wittrock is playing the gentleman caller in that play by just coincidence. And I was blown away by the subtlety. And the moment I saw him in that role, the list of people for Tom became just Finn Wittrock. And
wow.
I think similarly to RJ, I think that he saw that this was maybe against the type of that he's generally cast in. And he read the script and connected with it. And so very early on, Finn was attached to it and felt so incredibly lucky to be able to work with somebody as talented as he is. And then from there, we connected. We added Jake Weary, who plays Dickie. I'd seen him in a number of things. Yeah, incredible actor. Also, like he's an actor who stars on the rise. Like I was looking the other day at IMDb, and he was the #1 actor on IMDb's star meter. And I was like, and he's in my film. Like, how'd that happen? So he was somebody that we met with early on. We were having coffee in the East Village, and again, similar. He's like, no one's ever asked me to play a police officer before. That's so far from every other role I've ever been offered. And I think maybe like the bully was the bucket that maybe he was put in prior to that time. It came together very slowly. This is a very small film, and then when the film fell apart just before 2020, I thought if I'm ever going to try to make this film, it's going to be with a completely different group of people. It's going to be a much smaller budget. And when I decided with a smaller group of producers that we were going to try to put all the pieces together at the start of 2023, we reached out to all the original actors again, just to say like, hey, we're going to try to put this film together. You're probably not going to be interested in doing it. But we just wanted to give you the courtesy of let us know if you are interested. There's no pressure. Don't even feel the need to respond to this email. Thank you for your interest a few years ago. And all of them came back to say that they wanted to know.
Wow.
They were all like, yeah, we don't really care about the budget. We were just interested in the story. And so that allowed us to make the film that's, I would say, is fairly close to the film that we were trying to make a few years prior.
It's very cool. One thing that stood out to me during the Q&A as well is you and RJ talked about the freedom you gave the actors to shape their characters. Is this a directing style that you typically use, or was this project specific?
I would love to say I have a directing style, but that would allude to the fact that I've done so much more than I've actually done. I was like a theater minor when I was a film major, and so I was acting, at least in college, just as much as I was doing film. It's like I know what worked for me and what didn't work for me. I honestly think it's probably better tied to the pieces I've directed more in a documentary setting or for the news settings. Of you could ask a great question, but the only thing that matters is the answer to that question. And similarly, the words I write on a script are hopefully great, but they're nothing until they're said out loud. And to give a script to a group of capable actors, as capable as the actors that we were working with in this film, who am I to quiet any of those instincts that they had? And so I would say all of the people involved in this film took the 30% that I wrote and gave the extra 70% to get the performances where they are. I remember Amy Forsyth, who plays Avery, walked over one day and she's like, "Oh, is that close to how you imagined it?" I was like, "I'll be honest with you, I didn't imagine it anything like that. Like that's so far from how I imagined it, but great." But I'm really happy with it. Like I feel like I had made decisions for every single character's every single line. And here's a great example of it. When there's the scene where Dickie, the cop, is driving Tom home and he's in the back of the police car. That's written to be a yelling scene. I was like, I want to put a caged animal in a confined space with Tom. And so we had like working at the metal grates and all that, like for the back seat. And it was like, I was like, oh, this is gonna be so intimidating. Jake said, he's like, well, the scene prior, I throw him on a hood of a car and you really see I yell at him and you see how far I might be able to go. What would be scarier is if in the next scene I'm really quiet. Like if I'm just reserved, we're still caged, we're still in this tight space, but you just saw what erupting looks like. So now you know what I'm capable of doing. And so I'm just going to now be at the bottom of that register because you'll always be waiting for that to happen.
Right.
If I'm watching the film, if I turn on to watch just to make sure the spelling of the credits is right, is correct, I will go, I'll watch it until that scene. And that's the scene halfway through the film. I'll start and be like, I'll stop after that scene. It's like my favorite. It's I mean, it's all my favorite. But I love that scene. And it's he's saying the lines I wrote, but he's delivering in a way that I never could have imagined it, and it works. And I also think that when you put people in a creative position to give them the flexibility to be creative, you're never really going to be disappointed. Yes, maybe there are times you might say, all right, that goes a little bit beyond what I'm hoping to do. There a common direction I would give on set was, I need less from you, or I'd say can I take away your can you do that again, but without anything on your face but your eyes. I think about there's a scene where Tom is in a diner and we're very close on him, and we're not generally very close on him. The camera's generally quite far away. And I just said, in this next scene, you only can use your eyes. I don't want to see any other part of your face move. Just your eyes. And so, but then again, you give that to a capable actor like Finn Wittrock. There's the one shot in the montage towards the end of the film where he makes eye contact with himself in the mirror after maybe not making eye contact with himself until that part in the story. And there's this one thing he just does with his eyes that I swear he finds his 8-year-old self in his eyes. There's barely any musculature in his face moving, but you just see his eyes lock in on something, and then muscles start firing so subtly in his face that make him feel I don't know. It's I feel like someone could watch that and be like, nothing has happened with his face. But when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh no, that's a man that just reconnected with himself.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's for me to limit that is insane.
So at this point now, you've made a short and a feature with very low budgets, and now you've moved to kind of a new level of budget, cast size, locations, etc. with Westhampton. A lot of new filmmakers are starting out in this so-called, $0 budget arena. Do you have any insight or advice for people who are working that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you go back 30, 40 years, I feel like we actually all have that in common, unless you were connected to in some way to a network that all the rest of us don't have access to. You really do have to start. You have to start small. My advice, I'll give my advice to my younger self, because I can't speak to everyone. But if I could talk to a younger version of myself, I would say a story that is interesting to you might be interesting to other people as well. But that's not what gets a movie made. Like, what gets a movie made is like the business side of that. Yeah. And during the pandemic, after I did dash cam, I was really aware of the things I didn't know. And so I went back to school to start taking classes at UCLA. I wanted to refresh myself on the business side of the industry, how things had evolved in the 15 years since I had been in college myself. And that is what allowed me to make Westhampton. It was the knowing how to make a business model for what I was doing that allowed me to make that film. And even like the film I'm working on now is a script that I developed while taking a film financing course, because they were just like this teacher was just talking about, like, if you want to make a $10 to $15 million film, it needs to have this. And like, it was a list of like, it needs, like, these are the things you have to be aware of. Like things like tax incentives, where you're filming, the types of actors, the tiers of actors that you're using, the number of actors maybe you want to use, number of locations you want to use. And I just listened to that, and I don't want to say I was formulaic in my approach of it, but I tried to create a story that really spoke to those elements that I learned in that class. And it took me years to make Westhampton, and even when we made it, it was a lot of putting our own money into it, like calling in every favor we ever had earned, or favors we hadn't earned. And then this other script, it was just called Paparazzo. I was fortunate that it was on the blacklist last year, but that was a script that I really had no trouble getting people to read and respond to. And I was like, for that one, the manager I work with was able to set up meetings with production companies that made the movies that inspired me to write that film. And they were like, oh, we read your film, we want to make it. Wow. And cool. They all wanted to make it without me directing it. but they were interested in making it. And so then I had to hold strong and prove myself with Westhampton, really. But but that was one that I was able to get much further, much faster, because I knew the business side of it. And that would be as boring of an answer as that is, and as much as I know I would roll my own eyes at that advice if I gave it to my 22 or 23-year-old self. I know that is the difference now. And when I'm putting together a project, I'm able to get, like, the project I'm working on right now, like, it's not even a script, it's an outline, and I'm able to progress it forward. Yeah. And it's just because, like, I just know how to do that too. And I don't say that's like a brag or a humble brag. Like, it's just that what I've learned is the more I know about the business of how it works, the easier it is to take a story I care about and move it forward. Where when it was just here's something I like, here's a story I want to make. It didn't really get that far. While I feel that I want to make stories and tell stories that are important to me, that speak to who I am as an artist, with air quotes. I also don't want to create scripts that just live on my hard drive, or create or shoot films that exist on a hard drive. And so, to know the business of that, and all that said, like, I also knew going into Westhampton, like, this isn't the most commercial film. This isn't the most conventional film. Like, it's not a film that's going to make millions and millions of dollars out of box office, but it is a film that's going to get into a festival. It is going to be it's obviously a film that could sell out in a 1,000-person theater, and leave those that watched it somewhat moved. Hopefully, I didn't hear from everybody, but the 10 people I spoke to afterwards said positive things. I was related to all of them, but it's I was aware of what Westhampton is and what its business case was, but that's also true for the other ones, and they have a much stronger business case.
Yeah, I went to school for TV and radio, and then film and television. Got my bachelor's in that, and film and television production. And you know what? The whole business side of it, they should have pressed that. Like, that is important to know from an educational standpoint, also just from the creative process. And I'm thinking back, I'm like, no, I had no classes in that. I had no classes. It was just script writing and let me do a thesis on a product to sell or something, you know. I'm not regretting that experience, but I really respect what you're saying, and I think it's important. And
yeah, it was a similar thing for me. Like I think I had one class on the filmmaking business, and even then, it was just how to submit a film to a film festival.
Yeah, right.
Like no one explained to me tax incentives or how financial institutions lend against an international pre-sale or something, or things like that they're not incredibly complicated, but no one ever explained it to me. It was information that I learned over the years through a lot of like failures of projects. But yeah, I mean, there was a film I worked on immediately after college where I was the producer's assistant for 4 weeks in Louisiana, and I learned more in those 4 weeks about the business of film than I had ever learned.
Totally.
Previous to that.
I can 100% relate to that. Every internship I did, every short film I worked on, that's being hands-on, right, is also like the best way to gain experience and really build your education. And
but on the other side of that, like also, so like I went to film school, and like I remember day one of school, I had a teacher that said, "You're going to learn a lot of things, but the most important thing you're ever going to learn is how to wrap a cable." And the class lasted, and people walked out. People like literally walked out of this class being like, "Oh, I'm too good for this." And so we weren't allowed to leave until we could like wrap this 100-foot cable under a certain amount of time. And so I was able to do that. You fast forward 4 years. I'm on the first day of my internship, and somebody had asked a group of us. I went to a college that no one's ever heard of, and everyone else is like NYU, Columbia, Fordham, School of Visual Arts, like the schools like I had wanted to go into. Some of them I did but couldn't afford it, and others I didn't even get into. And the leader of the internship said, "How many of you want to be a production PA versus how many want to be an office PA?" Everyone wanted to be a production PA. No one wanted to do office. And he said, "Here's a 500-foot cable. Whoever could wrap this cable the fastest will be a production." I was done with that cable before they like had figured out like where the end of it was. Like I just I then moved to California shortly after college, and my job on set was wrapping and dropping cables.
Christian, you just unlocked a memory for me. Like, where did you grow up in New York or California? Or I mean, obviously Westhampton, but did you go to college on Long Island?
Yeah, I went to Five Towns College on Long Island.
Okay, I went to Suffolk Community College for TV and radio, and like, let me tell you, we had to learn how to wrap cables. And when I interned at Cablevision years and years and years ago, now it's Optimum. That was one of the things. Like, oh man, Christian, that just wow.
Yeah, like I feel like every production photo, like everyone has like the slate in their like Instagram photos. It was me with just a 500-foot cable.
Right.
Because it's like that's how, because I'm getting work. I'm getting work with this cable.
Well, Christian, thank you so much, for making the film first, and then also for joining us to talk about it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you watching Dashcam too. Like that was.
Oh yeah.
To be able to talk about that is surreal, even though we didn't make it too long ago. But I feel like we made it, dropped it, and just never heard of it again. It was gone. So yeah, excited to talk about that too.
Loved the film. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you so much to Christian for coming on and talking with us. If you haven't seen Westhampton yet, be sure to add it to your watch list so that you can see it as soon as it's available.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Theme music by Jean Marie Vargas. Visit us at our website, moviefriendspodcast.com, and please subscribe and rate our show wherever you are listening. You can support Movie Friends at patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Thanks for listening.